All right, we're live. Midwest BDC March Madness Conversations with Marnese. That's a lot of M's. So, welcome back, everyone. Last week we talked with Margaret Charney Hendrick, our board of directors. Now we have Jacob Serfling, who's our other staff member. And I'm just going to be introducing you to our team because they are also the beating drum of the Midwest BDC, how we get things going. And so I am Marnese Jackson. I am the executive director at the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition. For those who don't know, our mission is to decarbonize the Midwestern building sector by 2050. And our focus states are Indiana, Iowa, Illinois, Michigan, Missouri, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Ohio. And we're going to get into why the Midwest BDC was founded in the first place. Our organization structure is that we center equity and also the HIMES principles for democratic organizing and the climate justice principles. And you can also Google those because they are very accessible online. And we are here to prevent environmental racism, high energy burden in homes. So if you have high utility bills, you have high rates. If you have gas appliances, we are trying to combat all of that in an equitable way. And so Jacob Serfling, he's joining us today. He is the Director of Building Decarbonization Policy and Projects. Yes, that's a long name, but we wanted to add some more razzle dazzle to his job title. And he's been in the coalition since 2021. Jacob was working alongside me as the co-director, but then I became the executive director when we became an independent nonprofit in February. And so now, today we're going to have a conversation with Jacob. And Jacob, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So as Marnie said, my name is Jacob Serfling. I'm the Director of Building Decarb Policy and Projects here at the Coalition. And I'll say I tried to keep that title as short as I could, and Marnie's kept adding words back into it. So don't blame me that it's a mouthful. I'm based out of Des Moines, Iowa, here with my family, and then as Marnie said, I've been with the coalition since September of 2021.
Thank you, Jacob. I did that. I just wanted more to it because Jacob does a lot. He manages a lot, and so I just wanted to. It just wasn't given enough for me, but Uh, so Jacob, what made you apply for this position? And what were you doing before? Tell the world.
Yeah, so my background prior to Midwest BDC was on the technical and engineering side of all of the things that we do. I graduated from Iowa State University in 2009 with a degree in mechanical engineering, and I worked designing, building mechanical systems, and doing energy efficiency analysis for around 12 years prior to doing this. Um, so that's kind of my background before the coalition, and then to the other part of your question, why did I end up coming here? And I think there's three main things that kind of drew me more towards policy and advocacy over time, rather than doing the more technical work. And one, I know it's a little bit of a cliche, but it's one for a reason. Like, having kids really changed my perspective on the work that I was doing. It kind of went from these are, interesting problems to work on with buildings in terms of being green and sustainable, to I really feel a personal connection to this idea that I'm doing something to leave things in a better place. It became a little bit more personal with that. I also, along the way, had really good work mentors that put me in professional positions that I hadn't really pictured myself in before. Doing more things like going out and giving talks on energy efficiency and things like that. And I maybe, when I was coming out of school, hadn't pictured myself in that sort of role, but I found that I really enjoyed that. Maybe enjoyed it a little bit more than the time that I was spending at my desk doing drawings or specking out equipment and things like that. And then, really state and local politics in Iowa, in Des Moines, kind of started intersecting with my previously kind of boring technical work. There were a few things, good or bad, that started happening. One was around 7 years ago now, the state of Iowa went through and started um, slashing some of the energy efficiency programs that had been really effective in the state, mostly because big industrial uh, utility ratepayers were complaining about having to pay into them. Um, it was also involved with trying to get some energy benchmarking ordinances passed here in Des Moines, and just seeing the opposition that came to play against something that was really pretty simple and basic and didn't need to be a big deal. I kind of went into it thinking, oh, this is pretty common sense. This is pretty simple. People will get on board with this. It's nothing crazy. Um, and it was the opposite. And so I think I just kind of had this moment of, um, the folks that I work with that are trying to make the built environment as safe and uh, healthy and climate friendly as they can. Um, they're not going to be able to do that unless we get this policy end right. So I had kind of started looking for an opportunity to do that. Um, and it was actually funny with Midwest BDC. We were actually on uh, a family vacation in Duluth. Um, and Marnese, I don't know if you have that moment when you're like on vacation someplace and you start talking about like, why don't we just live here instead of where we're at already? So it had kind of started as just looking, like, oh, what would it even look like if we like moved to northern Minnesota and things like that, and that's how I ended up stumbling on the job posting for this position. And I was talking about it with my wife, and she kind of said, well, this sounds like everything you've been complaining about not doing for like the last 2 or 3 years. So you better apply for this. You better go and pursue that opportunity. And definitely I'm glad I did.
I appreciate that, Jacob. So, like, now that you kind of have been here since the beginning and we've been structuring, the coalition and really focusing on tackling this work, what makes the Midwest BDCs different than any other, group tackling this work? Coming from where you're sitting as an engineer, like, how do you think we're different?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And like with my perspective on it, definitely I was involved with other professional or um, community education groups when I was more on the engineering and technical side.
Mhm.
Um, but it was very, I think, disconnected from any sort of social justice or environmental justice component to it, and often not because the people that were involved with those groups don't care about those things, but I think they saw it as something separate, or that they had to treat it as something separate, or they were going to lose people, right? There's always that fear of like, we're going to turn off our more conservative technical colleagues if we talk about it in terms of climate change or environmental justice, or um, our clients are going to see this and be turned off by different ideas. And I do get that, but I think it has been really refreshing to be a part of an organization that sees those two things, those different aspects go hand in hand, right? It's like, you remember like the old Reese's commercials of like, you got your chocolate in my peanut butter, you got my peanut butter on my chocolate, and it's a little bit like, you got my green decarbonized buildings and my social justice, and you got your social justice on my building decarb. And actually, when you see it together, you're like, oh yeah, these two things should have been together all along, right? So I'm glad you followed me with that analogy. I wasn't sure if that was going to make any sense.
I get it, but when you eat it, it is so delicious. That's actually one of my favorite candies. So I get it. Like peanut butter and chocolate. Like, oh, he's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And
So I think that is the difference, that like, when you talk about like the technical piece and the environmental justice piece, and like the perspectives of folks that are actually doing community work, like a lot of times you're lucky to get, maybe two of those things combined in the work, or you really only get one. And I think we really do try our best here with Midwest BDC to like keep all of those things in mind, in the work that we do. And I think that is the difference for us.
yeah, and I think that's also the hard part because focusing on equity, and when you came in, equity is focusing on bringing people to the decision making, getting resources, lifting up communities of color who may not even be within this field, because we know that building decarbonization is dominated by white males. So as a white male, did you find that difficult coming in, transitioning from just doing engineer technical to doing like both mashing together that peanut butter and chocolate together? Did you find that difficult for you as a white male coming in, and we have members who are not as spun up on building sciences? Like, as I say all the time, this is not a community of color dominated field, right? So like, what did you face? What were the difficulties did you face coming in as an employee?
I guess I don't know if I necessarily think of it as
Mm-hmm.
difficulties, but it is something that I try to be mindful of like, you're always working on it, right? It's always going to be a process. And even if we have majority black members or staff or things like that, like the historical inequities that we're trying to overcome as we also make this massive energy transition, like that work's just like never going to be done. So I think that's the approach that I try to take from it, is like, I can always do better with all of that, as good as my intentions might be.
Yeah, and just to go back, like, with you focused on decarbonization policy and the projects part of this work, and, the importance of this, how do you like tap into, because we're focused on bringing people grassroots, from the bottom up. How hard, well, is it confusing in your opinion, bringing people along, everyday people along? Like, what has been your process to with doing that?
Sure. Well, I think the good and the bad part of building decarbonization is that it intersects with everything, right? Because you're fundamentally changing the setting that you're living your whole life in, right? Where you live, where you work, where you go with that. So I don't worry that there's a reason that folks should care about this or that it does impact their life, but it does take time to like parse out which part of that is really going to resonate with which people. Like there is a hook, whether that's their children's health and how indoor air quality impacts that, or just caring about their energy bills not being super volatile, or seeing that there's these big federal investments getting made and wanting to make sure their community gets a piece with that. Like, even if you're not talking with somebody who sees themselves as some sort of big climate warrior or something like that, like there's a hook there. You just have to find it. And I think you have to have a certain willingness to be like flexible in your approach to the work
Mhm.
that meets them where they're at. Like, to bring people in, there's a way to bring them into building decarb, but it might mean that you're not necessarily focusing on the parts of the work that you thought were going to be the most important before you started working with that person. I think that is sometimes hard for folks that are really like steeped in the climate change and emissions piece of it to get comfortable with.
Yeah, and with policy work, it can feel intangible and daunting. So, what helps you, recenter in the work? When it feels like progress is moving slow, I actually feel that way. Like nothing's gonna change. I mean, not just with not talking about building decarbonization, just overall with the land, our political system. Like this is daunting. Nothing's gonna change. Like what keeps you like excited when things feel like it's moving slow? We're never gonna see like the revolution in our lifetime. Like what keeps you going?
Yeah. Well, I will say that being married to a therapist is both like helpful and humbling in that regard. Um, uh, but I would say, I really value my wife as a resource on that for helping me keep perspective on the work that I'm doing. And I think what I'm about to say, like, I really like almost got angry the first time that she said it to me, but the more I've sat with it, it's
Okay.
really been helpful for
What she
keeping
said?
me centered with that. And it was basically like, you can't actually save the world with what you're doing, Jake. Like, you are not that powerful or that important. There are too many parts of the problem that you are trying to solve that are ultimately out of your control.
Yeah.
And I think the first time that I heard her say that to me, I really focused on like the negative aspect of that, of like, oh, you're saying what I'm doing is pointless. Like, I'm already feeling bad about this. Like, why are you saying that to me? But when I calmed down and listened to like the positive part of what she was saying with that, it was so much more of like, here's what you can control, and this is what you can always stay positive about. So it's like, what can I actually do? What do I actually have control over, and focusing on those things? And I can make this coalition as strong of a space and force as it can possibly be.
Yeah.
I can help guide it in what I think is the right direction. I can make my immediate home or community as good as a place as it can be. And I can have faith that those things, cumulatively add up to something,
Mm,
right? And I think that can be like a difficult energy to sit in, but it's super valuable for like recentering it when you're like, we might have a federal government that's not super friendly to what we want to do for the next 4 years. Like, that's a real possibility that could happen. We might not get the exact win that we want every time that we pitch something to a city council or a local government,
mhm.
or get that grant that we wanted to do for a pilot project. And that can, in the moment, make it feel like we're not making any progress. But I think we're always working on making the bubble that we do have control over as good as it can be. And I think it's just helpful to hold on to that.
You know, you are correct. Like, and I actually had to grapple with a similar comment someone made to me, and my response was, well, I'm doing something. We're doing something, and we see the little small wins. We may not see the big wins within our lifetime, but we have had some really big wins within our coalition efforts within the last 4 years. Like, just bringing like that, once again, going back to your analogy around the Reese's peanut butter cup, bringing the chocolate and the peanut butter together to coexist, like, that's really difficult, right? And so I wanted to ask you, what are some big wins within Midwest BDC history that stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely the fact that we have brought so many people in, and made that commitment to doing that by helping fund the work that they're doing on the ground,
Mm,
and not just seeing those projects be successful, but
mm,
see those folks then turn around and being amazing advocates, both for the coalition and both for just the work that we're trying to do. I think that's in the 3 years or so that we've existed as an organization. Like, that's that's the win, right? I
mm,
think, like, I don't know if you talked about this when you talked with Margaret, but just thinking of like when Midwest BDC first got involved with standing up the Pembroke electrification pilot, and that started as such a, you know talk about like, I can impact my community, right, even if I can't solve the whole problem. And that was very focused just on their community, and they had a lot of struggles just to even get that off the ground. But now I
mm,
look at how much they have learn from that, how we can see those lessons from what they did, like moving out through the coalition. It's going to make the work that our other members do in their communities that much stronger, because we're in conversation with each other. I think that's the win. And I see that continuing to build as we go.
mm. So, like, the coalition, we then launched as our own 501c3. Ideally, we want to have an impact, as you have stated, and continue to have those wins, those small wins. They actually may be really big to us, like the Pembroke pilot project. We want to replicate that in all of our A-state regions and beyond. But within the next 5 to 10 years, dream big. Ideally, what would you like to see the coalition be doing or accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking over the next decade, I mean, I think the dream is that all of this federal funding that we're working so hard right now as a coalition to get implemented, that's just like the first wave of what we see.
Mm,
That we are so successful as a coalition, not just securing the benefits of that investment for folks, but really like making it clear when we're out there in our communities that this was an amazing start. This could be so much better. Look at this little seed of, a few homes got electrified, or this one,
mm,
community geothermal project got put in. And we just see demand for more of that cannot be denied by our cities and our states and our federal government, and they're forced to act on it because these things are so obviously good, so popular, that they would be, stupid politically to stand in the way of more of that happening. uh,
mm.
that's like the utopian vision for me of what we accomplish as a coalition.
So, you got promoted to the director of building decarbonization policy and projects. Congratulations. And you were working alongside me in the co-director role. I still see us as a horizontal and not a hierarchy. I'm like, dang, I miss Jacob. Like, it's lonely. It's lonely at the top. I ain't gonna lie, it's lonely. But I wanted to ask you, what did you want to accomplish in that co-director position that you weren't able to, but now you want to pursue in your current position?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've really been like downplaying it as a promotion when I talk to folks and say it's more of like a focus in, right? That we were sort of in this phase of building the organization, and we were all wearing like a lot of hats to get us to this point that we're in now. And now it's like, okay, now I can focus on
Mm-hmm.
what we want to accomplish, on the policy and projects front. So I'm excited about that. I know you're talking to Eddie tomorrow. I'm so excited that he's on, and that we're already starting to be able to work together to help partner with some of our coalition members and pursue some of these different state and federal grant opportunities to do more of those, demonstrations and pilots and things like that. Stuff that we've been talking about wanting to do more of, since I came on, and we just, didn't have capacity to do it, and now it feels like we do. Um, and I think, we've had some wins and success as a coalition, but a lot of it on the policy front has been reacting to things
Yeah.
that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think, with where we're at as an organization, um, and what the role that I'm in now, I think we're going to have the ability to get more proactive with our members, not just making sure that they're engaging when there is an opportunity to talk about building decarb, but we're going to start creating our own opportunities. We're going
Mm-hmm.
to start being proactive about getting this on the agenda in our cities and our communities and things like that,
Yeah.
where it maybe wasn't before. So that's what I'm excited about right now.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because for the long term game, we have to be proactive so we can be sustainable, so we can really have that impact that some people may not think we're going to see. But I do believe if we all think like that and not keep reacting, because that's what they want, that's what the powers that be, and that's kind of like the lay of the land of the United States of America. We're always reacting to whatever they put out, right?
Yep.
So I appreciate you talking about sustainability for the long term. So Jacob, as we um get ready to lead this podcast and prepare for our upcoming podcast. So what do you like to do outside of work? I know you're not out here. I just know you're not out here just talking about building
Yeah,
decarbonization.
well, I know we're both like the staff people that got younger kids at home, so
Yeah.
it sometimes feels like I don't do anything outside of that and work, but but not always. I'll start off by saying that you are real lucky that Iowa State doesn't have their first
Mhm.
a tournament game until 6:30 tonight, or we would have been rescheduling this interview
Oh
for
my goodness.
a
Well, thank you,
different time.
Jacob.
Go Cyclones. We're going to make that Final Four run this year. So definitely spend some time doing that, trying to get outside with our dogs and our kids, and spending that time outdoors. Excited for it to start getting nice so we can get some stuff planted out back here in the yard and all of that. And then I'm a big reader as well. So if coalition members want book recommendations, you can reach out for those in the future. But yeah, just kind of that sort of stuff. I'm pretty low key that way.
I hear that, but We have to, have our work-life balance. So I'm glad that you mentioned to people that you do have a life outside of work. Because I don't think people think we don't do stuff. So that's why I actually post on Facebook. Yes, I'm doing something tonight because I have a life. So with all that being said, Jacob, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of the staff. But and I want to shout out to Sheila Curley Campbell, who is our vice president of the board of directors, for tuning in today. Shout out to Sheila and all the hard work you're doing in Indiana. So thanks everyone for tuning in today. But just FYI, we have a few more of these live streams coming up where you will meet our staff. And up on deck tomorrow, you will have our director of grants and development, Edward Davis II, and our communications and digital marketing manager, Maggie Heiser. So yes, this is going to be exciting to talk to both of these staff members tomorrow. We also like for you to check out some upcoming events. Tomorrow we will have our own webinar talking about health and building decarbonization 101. And then we will also have another webinar coming up in mental health 101. So yes, we're expanding on our training program. You can also go to our website at midwestbdc.org and /events where you can sign up to attend those webinars. And then you can also join our email list if you want to be up to date on all the Midwest BDC activities. So yes, please come on and get involved and get activated with all the work that we're doing, because yes, it involves you. You may not believe in climate change, but you do pay DTE bills, you pay utility bills. If you have a gas stove, gas appliances, yes, this applies to you. You might want to get involved with the coalition and our efforts, okay? So thank you, Jacob. It was nice seeing you on Zoom, even though we were on Zoom 30 minutes ago. But it was nice seeing you.
Fun. I'm glad we're able to do stuff like this too. So
yeah, this is fun, right? We can have fun with it. All right, have a wonderful day.
You too.